All right, good people. I just have to explain here that a lot of people have been asking me, how did you, well, actually, two people asked me. So I said, how did you get all this footage? So, I thought we'd make a little podcast here. Here's how it happened. I was a cameraman in New York. I got hired by these folks producing a Cure concert, Robert Smith and the Cure. It was in, I think it was in Detroit, and I was hired to be like a handheld on-stage cameraman. And Robert Smith kind of took a fancy to me.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't bad looking back then.
Yeah.
And he said, I want him to be part of the show. Go to the gas station and get him a jumpsuit that
Really?
gas station guys wear.
Why?
Because he wanted me to be there, and then he wanted all the other cameramen to be filming me with him and stuff on the stage there. And then after we finished, he changed his mind, and so they spent all this time trying to cut me out of the damn show.
Okay.
And it was actually called Show, and it was a theatrical release. It was in the movie theaters.
Interesting.
Then I go back to New York, and then I found out that the producers for this video that I was doing, that they were touring with Paul McCartney.
Wow.
And it was the New World Tour in 1993, which I think started in America and was going to go to Japan, South America, so on and so forth. So they're halfway, they're just starting the tour. So I wrote a letter to them. They're in England, they're British folks. And I wrote a letter. I was like, hey, I'm glad you liked my work on the Cure there. I think I could probably, maybe do something good for Paul if you want to bring me on. So 8 months go by, I never got a letter back.
Okay.
Then finally, one day, there's a letter, and you open it, and they're like, hey, we got your letter. It was 9 months ago, and they're acting like they just got it yesterday. We got your letter. We think, maybe we could do something here. Can you be in Paris on Thursday? This was Monday. And I was like, yeah.
So you have only 4 days
to prepare for it. But it's just a one-off. We want, we need an extra cameraman there in Paris to shoot. And it was going to be Paul is Live, which was an album and also was a video release that you can still buy on eBay.
Wow. How did it feel?
Well, I was excited, because
yeah, of course.
I was a lifelong Beatles fan. So I'm like, yeah. And then I go, and I go to Paris, and we're in the arena, and the producer's like, come on up on stage, I want to talk to you. Totally empty arena. He said, Kevin Godley, he was in 10cc, but he became a director.
Yeah.
Kevin Godley was going to direct this thing, but he's sick, he can't make it. So Paul's actually going to be the director, so he's going to give you, the instructions. It's like, Paul's my director, that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
And then I'm standing there by myself on the stage, and I was like, I wonder if I'm actually really going to meet Paul. And out of the corner of my eye, I see him walking up onto the stage, climbing the stairs there on the stage. And he walks right over to me. He goes, hey, I'm Paul. I was like I didn't know that. No,
yeah, of course he's introducing himself.
I didn't say that, but I was thinking it. He says, what's your name? I said, my name's Michael. He goes, oh, my brother's name is Mike. I can't do Paul, but because his brother is Mike McCartney. So there was already like a little bit of a connection there.
Nice connection.
I was going to tell him my brother's name is Paul, but it turns out it's not. So,
that's funny. Is it true?
No, my brother's name is Jack.
Okay.
But close enough to John Lennon, I guess. So anyway, we're there on the stage, and he pulls out a piece of paper, and he just puts it on his knee and bends down. Starts writing stuff. And when he was done, he threw it on the floor. So I picked it up and took it home with me, months later.
Yeah.
And so I had that, and unfortunately I sold it on eBay. I wish I still had it.
How much did you...
Probably, I can't remember, maybe like $600.
Okay. $600.
Yeah, I spent it in about 2 days, and I should have kept the paper. Because he goes, all right, you're going to be the, I won't try to do him. He's like, you're going to be the on-stage cameraman for this show tonight, and so there's a couple of things you need to know. I said, all right. He says, now, during Magical Mystery Tour, a piano rises up from the stage.
Mm-hmm.
So don't stand there
Mm-hmm.
for Magical Mystery, because you're going to look pretty silly standing on top of my piano.
And you have to be on the stage too.
I was on the stage.
Yeah.
I was always on the stage for
Yeah.
the concert, you know?
Yeah.
So I said, all right, I won't stand there during Magical Mystery. And he goes, now Live and Let Die.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part where we have these gigantic explosions, this huge conflagration of flash pots shooting fireworks. And it's like, to live and let die.
That is scary.
And he said, okay, here's where they're going to come out. There,
Mhm.
pointing there,
Mhm.
there. So during Live and Let Die, don't stand in those 4 places.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right.
Yeah.
I'm not really even listening because it's Paul McCartney. I'm just like saying I'm talking to a Beatle.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, then he leaves, whatever. And then during the show, I remembered not to stand center stage for Magical Mystery Tour. So I didn't wind up standing on his piano there. But then he's doing Live and Let Die, and he's building up to the crescendo part, you know. Live and let live, you know, in this ever-changing world in which we live in, makes you give it. And I said, oh no, it's coming, I know. Where did he say that? Don't stand. I couldn't remember where I was not supposed to stand.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna come in a second. I was like, God damn it, you know. And then I realized, what is the safest place on that stage? As close to Paul McCartney as he can be.
Exactly.
So he's on the piano.
So you went to him.
I ran.
Oh.
I just put, you know, I wasn't sure. I just ran, and he's on the bench, and I'm right behind him. And I was so close that my shoulder was actually touching his back. And even there, as safe as it would have to be, because they don't want to kill him, the heat from those explosions was like incredible.
Wow, lucky
you know?
guy.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah. What did he say? Did he say anything about it?
Well, actually, later he did mention that, you know, that I was like unprofessional.
Mm-hmm. Professional, okay.
No, I think he said, smart move.
Mm-hmm. Really?
Good.
How cool.
Yeah.
he
Like if I go
is.
run next to Linda, you know,
Yeah.
it's less safe.
Yeah.
That's an easy divorce.
Mm-hmm.
My job was to kind of like depict his life behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Now the stuff I'm putting up on YouTube now is, we filmed. I joined the band in Tokyo,
Yes.
so I did Paris. Then they sent me home,
Mm-hmm.
and then they said, "Good job. We're starting in Tokyo, you know, in 3 weeks. You know, so come."
Mm-hmm.
And so I did. And you know, you would think 3 weeks later, a man who has met you
Mm-hmm.
for 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
famous or not, might not really remember you
Mm-hmm.
or your name. As soon as I walked in, he goes, "Mike," Paul, you know.
He is very, very nice.
Yeah. So anyway, I walk into the thing, and he's like, "Mike, I love the footage, you know, that I shot in Paris. You know, reminds me of the Cavern days, because it was black and white, and
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
like Super 8 film. Cavern days. All right, cool. So then they were launching the tour, so they did this big rehearsal in Tokyo,
Yeah.
in a rehearsal studio, and you know, I was hired to film the whole thing. And then the other part of what I'm doing there is, when first concert at Tokyo Dome, they wanted me to film the sound check.
Mm-hmm.
Because what they do, he has a, it's not a charity, but the school that he went to is now called LIPA, which is the Liverpool Institute for the Performing Arts, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And he put all the money into it. So now any people who contribute to that, he allows like maybe 60 people who are contributors to attend the sound check.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the only ones in the whole Tokyo Dome,
Mm-hmm.
you know? So that was kind of the situation with that, you know? So I was the only American.
Yeah.
Everyone else was English on the
Mhm.
tour, you know? And one time we're at the bar there, and the British guys, you know, I don't know what they were, roadies, guitar techs, piano techs, or whatever they're, different things, but they're friendly folks.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Paul, he took his whole family on the road with him, you know?
Yeah.
So Mary, his daughter,
Mm-hmm.
in '93, she must have been like 23 years old or something. And Stella, who's now famous as a designer,
Yeah.
she was probably 20, I don't know. And James, his son, was like 16. They were all there, you know. Now Mary and Stella were, you know, attractive young women there, and the guys, the roadie guys, are like, that Mary, you know, she's something else, man. You know, if we didn't sign that contract, I could really go for her. I was like, contract? What contract? He said, you didn't sign the contract? I said, what contract? You know, because I joined the tour in the middle, and I think everyone signed the contract at the very beginning of the tour, and they forgot about me in the middle. They forgot the contract where you won't have intimate relations with Mary and Stella.
Intimate relationship. What is that?
You know, like a romantic relationship.
Yeah.
But you won't.
But did you expect that, or?
No, I had no idea that they would.
Is that a joke?
No,
That was no joke.
that was really true, and
Yeah.
you know, but for some reason James was not included in that. His son. So apparently you could have intimate relations with James, but he was a minor, and the other two were not minors. So I said, no, I didn't sign that contract. You know, I guess I forgot because the tour's halfway over now. They said, are you kidding me? Then he goes, you know, you gotta. I want to keep this clean. He says, you gotta have sex with Mary.
Yeah.
I was like, what? He says, yeah, you gotta sleep with her. I said, are you crazy? He said, you didn't sign the contract. I said, well, I was like, you can't just, you know, do that. You have to, I don't know, you got to work your way up to that. Plus, you know, I don't want to do that anyway. I don't want to. He says, are you nuts? And if you do it, make sure you don't use a condom. I said, what? He said, well, wouldn't you like to have a baby beetle?
All right.
A baby beetle.
Baby beetle.
So I said, no, I don't want a baby beetle. Well, they were so nice. I never tried to do anything. I took a crack at Linda, though. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She was nice, too. So, I don't know what else I can tell you about it, but so we did the whole thing. We did Japan. Then we went to South America.
Yeah.
And it was such a long thing there. A long, arduous tour, but just great all the time, you know, so much fun. And then on the last day, Paul is like, he has a huge crew. He's like, all right, we're going to do a group photo of the crew, so everyone get up on the stage. Literally, it's got to be like 90 people with Paul and Linda standing in the front.
Yeah.
And then his band, which is, you know, in my opinion, the best band he was ever in since the Beatles, was Robbie McIntosh on guitar, Hamish Stewart on bass or guitar, depending, Wickens on keyboards, Linda McCartney on keyboards, and Blair Cunningham on drums. Great band. So anyway, everyone, the whole tour, you know, I don't want to say they're aloof to Paul, but they treat him with like, not deference, but a lot. They don't want to come off as fans.
Yeah.
They want to be professional colleagues, or you know, or even underlings, whatever. But they don't want to be like gazing at him like he's Paul McCartney of the Beatles.
Of course.
Yeah. But as soon as they took that picture, basically all bets were off. Like the job was over, so they all start rushing it. Paul, can we take a picture? Can you and me, you know, Paul, can I have your autograph? Paul, this, that, Paul, this, that. And the most professional people, the most hardened roadies and guys who climb scaffolds and stuff became like 15-year-old girls at the foot of a beetle.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm just standing there watching all this mayhem, but I had prepared something. And I said, Paul, because almost everyone else was gone, he's still there. I said, Paul, this thinking I want something from him, you know, picture or whatever. I said, Paul, I have something for you. I'm the only person who gave him something instead of took from him.
Yeah, that is very nice.
And it was just before Christmas, so what I did is I drew a Christmas card for him, personally, and I gave it to
Drew
him.
a Christmas card. What's the picture about?
Well, I'll tell you in a second.
Okay.
Because he's like, oh, thanks, and he hugged me. So I actually was hugged by a Beatle, and I didn't hug him; he hugged me. So it was like, it was all right. So I had total access. I had all access thing. So now everyone's gone, and I used to make a habit of going to Paul's dressing room after the show, after everyone was gone, and just snooping around, and so I go in because I wanted to look in his trash can and see if my card was in there unopened. Like he's just like, another punk gives me a goddamn thing I have to look at. Yeah, throws it away. So I looked in the trash can and it wasn't there.
Okay.
Meanwhile, there's all this food and macadamia nuts. I'm eating them, and there's flowers and stuff, and I'm just in there having a good old time.
Right.
Now, because it was the last day of the tour, he organized a party. He rented out the entire top floor of the hotel. I forget which town it was in. I'd have to look it up. So anyway, I was invited, so I showed up, and they had gifts for us. You can't really see it, but there's a gold record right there behind that mirror from that tour that they gave me. It has my name on it and everything.
Ah.
Anyway, so they gave a whole bunch of stuff. And I got there, I was early, because I was excited. You're not supposed to show up early for these things. And Paul wasn't there, but a guy, and I'm talking to this guy, and then I hear behind me, hey, Mike. And I turned around, it was Paul, and he looked fantastic. I'm starting to sound like John Lovitz. He looked fantastic. And he's standing there with Linda, and he goes, Mike, thanks for the card, I really liked it, And Linda goes, what card? He says, oh, he gave me a Christmas card. She goes, what was it? Well, he starts describing the card to her.
Yeah.
And what I had drawn was, like, it looks like there's a Christmas tree, and then there's a gift that was opened along a box, and then there's a saw on the floor, like a saw. And then, but you realize it's not a Christmas tree, it's a prisoner who had cut a jagged hole in the wall of his prison that looks like a tree. And it was snowing, and the snowflakes look like ornaments. And Paul describes it. He says, but then you notice that there's a little chap running through the snow in the distance going, running away, And I'm thinking, I made Paul McCartney think about something for 2 minutes, or 1 minute, 30 seconds.
That's cute.
Where whatever he, his entire life made me think. So I got my minute and a half.
It's cute to think that way.
So that's kind of the story. His publicist was a guy named Jeff Baker, a really great guy, and he kind of took me under his wing. And like a reporter from Rolling Stone came to, I can't remember where we were, somewhere in South America. They wanted to do a story on Paul.
Yeah. In
'93 for Rolling Stone magazine, and Jeff Baker, his publicist, asked me if I would come to the dinner where they were going to do the interview.
Yeah.
So it was me, Rolling Stone reporter, and the publicist Jeff Baker, Paul's publicist. I wasn't there to film; I was just there, to just experience it. So he was nice. And one time I asked him, because Jeff would go, they almost made me like Paul's media guy in the sense, if he was going to do an interview with a local station, Paul, he's 50 something at that point, 51. So they didn't want to have close-ups too tight,
Yeah.
And so Jeff Baker's like, you make sure, watch out for these goddamn cameramen, here in South America, don't let him get in too close. So Jeff would say, I was going to set up the camera for the cameraman, which I felt bad about, but then I zoom out, so it's like a waist to head shot, and the guy's like, because they don't want that on television. They want to get in there, like Tom Snyder or something. You remember who Tom Snyder is?
I don't know.
So I was setting up the cameras for him, and So I said to Jeff, so I go to Jeff Baker, the publicist, because he's like, listen, Paul has a press conference at 9 o'clock in the morning tomorrow. I'm like, and here it is, 11 o'clock at night, and we're in the bar. And I said, 9 o'clock in the morning? What? He's Paul McCartney. Why does he have to get up at 7:30 or 8 and take a shower so he can do a press conference that's not even necessary for his... and Jeff goes, because he loves the attention. If the crowd isn't responsive enough for one of his shows, he's depressed afterwards. I said, boy, I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
You know? By the way, I did work for Yoko also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can see that.
And I was like, the producers who hired me to tour Paul, they knew that because it was on my resume or whatever, or even my demo reel. I did a music video for Yoko. I directed it. They said, listen, man, whatever you do, don't tell them you worked for Yoko. You know? It was called Love 90. What she did was John Lennon has that song Love on his first solo. Now, love is real, real is love, la la la. So Yoko covered it. She was like, I love it.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
Singing it like that. And we did a music video. And they said, just don't say that you worked for her. You know? And the guy who hired me was a friend of mine, Japanese guy. He says, yeah, I want you to direct Yoko. She needs full script. And normally for a music video, you just write a paragraph of what it was going to be. She wants full script, he says. All right, so I wrote a full script. And my friend, the producer who's producing it, his name is Akio, he said, this is good, but what's this? I had written like, see you of Yoko looking at the sky. He says, what's see you? I said, it stands for close up, you know, that's what they put in scripts, you know. Like LS is long shot, MS is medium shot, CU is close up. He said, well, change it to right close up because she won't understand. I said, are you kidding? She's a filmmaker. She's made about 60 films with John Lennon and on her own.
Yeah.
She's going to know what CU means. Right? He said, all right, fine. So then I get to meet Yoko. He brings me into the Dakota to meet her. And he goes, this is Michael, the director. But Akira goes, she made that many films? I said, yeah. He said, how many have you seen? I said, none. I never saw one of her goddamn films. But anyway, so he introduced me. He says, this is Michael. He's going to direct. He loves your films. Where I just told him the day before that I never saw one of her films. He loved your films. And she goes, oh, you love my films. Which one is your favorite? I said, what's my favorite? I like them. I like all of them. So, all of them, really?
Was it true?
I never saw it.
Okay. Oh.
But then,
that's right.
she was like, name one. And I said, I'm trying to think. And then I go, oh, yeah, Flies. That was good.
That's
Flies.
a good answer.
Flies. She said, it's called Fly. It's not flies. It's not plural. There's only one fly. It was a low budget. We couldn't afford two flies.
Okay.
Anyway, that film was a fly crawling on a naked woman's body. That's the whole film.
That's the whole film about?
It's probably a short. It can't be that long. It's probably like 8 minutes or something like that. Long enough to be very annoying.
Yeah.
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 Well, we've gone off the track here. People wanted to know about how. So, 30 years later, I said, I remembered that I had all this footage, which has never been released, has never been used for anything. And so now I said, all right, let's put it on YouTube and see what happens. So that was kind of the impetus for that. So the thing about Yoko, you know, when I first met her, and she extended her hand to me like she was a duchess or something like that. And then I took her hand, and, you know, and just for a brief second, I'm holding her hand, and I'm thinking, this hand used to hold John Lennon's penis. You know? So I was like, ah!
Oh, that's what it's in your mind.
Yeah. And then she spoke. She opened her mouth,
Mm-hmm.
and I said, "This mouth also." Oh, never mind. You know what I mean.
What did she say?
I forget what she said, but you know, I just couldn't think where that mouth had been before.
Okay.
Yeah, years before.
Dirty mind.
It was 10 years after his death, so I'm sure she brushed her teeth a few times after that. But so we're doing a music video for Yoko, as I said, Love 90. And you know, she's lazy as fuck, so she wanted to just do it at Strawberry Fields, which is right across from her house.
Yeah.
She said, "I want to do it 8 in the morning." I said, "Because I don't like to get up early." I said, "Why?" She said, "I don't want like fans and tourists for you there."
Yeah, of course.
I didn't say it, but I said, "I don't really think you have to worry about fans, you know, because you're Yoko." And so the day before, though, my the producer guy, my friend Akio, maybe I shouldn't say his last name. He said, "Yoko, we want to do. We're going to do some publicity. We want to do an interview with you in the Dakota. I'll bring a small camera crew." Yoko goes, "I wasn't there, but this was Akio told me." He said, "Make sure that they conceal all of their equipment, because if not, I'll have to pay a fee to the Dakota." And then, you know, they come on a nice sunny day there to do the thing, and they forgot to hide the equipment. And they walk in and they waltz right in there with no hidden equipment. Yoko sees it. She read the riot act to Akio. She said, "Now I'll have to pay $1,500 to the Dakota." I mean, the woman's worth millions, and she's worried about $1,500. So anyway, she says 8 o'clock in the morning at the Strawberry Fields. I'm there at 7:30. 7:45. A big bus pulls up, and all these Japanese schoolgirls get out of it. You know, they were just there on some school tour of New York, from Japan somewhere, and they're all taking pictures of the Imagine mosaic there.
Yeah.
And then they look up, and Yoko Ono is walking across the street, which for them is probably and they're like run over to her, and Yoko was, "Yes, 8 o'clock, because I don't want any fans or tour," and she's surrounded by Japanese girls. I gotta tell you, I was a little envious of her at that point. It's like, this is off the subject, but I worked on MTV used to do an Unplugged show, and they had Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, and they wanted to call it Unleaded. This was in the 90s, 94 or something maybe. And they're like, "All we want to do is go somewhere where no one knows who we are." And they said, "How about Morocco? And we'll put like a rug out in the middle of the marketplace square.
Yeah.
And then we'll come out and we'll perform for people who don't know who the hell we are."
Right.
So I'm there, I'm waiting. There's this rug, giant rug there. And so everyone's just curious about the rug. They don't know anything. They're just looking at the rug saying, "What's that doing here?" And no one would know who Led Zeppelin was. And then I see these 2 kids walking by, a boy and a girl. And the boy is wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, American kid. And hey, he said, "What?" I said, "Listen, man, you know, you might want to stick around here for a few minutes." He said, "Why?" I said, "Well, listen, I dig your shirt, you know. Why don't you just hang around?" So he hung around, and then they come out, and he was like, couldn't believe it, you know? So that's neither here nor there. But with Yoko, so she says, "For the video, I want to write 'I love you' in the sky with my finger." Right? "I love you" in the sky. And then, you know, with special effects, you can actually put the words coming off of my finger. So I can, yeah, right? She had many ideas. She's like, "I want to kiss a tree." I said, "Okay, any tree in particular?" She said, "That one." I said, "All right, fine." But anyway, with the writing "I love you" in the sky, I came prepared that day. And I went to the store and I bought like a small bottle of India ink, you know, black ink. And I'm like, she comes and I said, Yoko. First thing I said, because she always wore these gigantic sunglasses
Yes.
at that time that she never took off.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Yoko, I have an idea for this shot. She said, what? I said, why don't you take off your sunglasses? She goes, I don't think so.
Yoko-san.
So then I was like, all right. So then when she's going to write I love you in the air, and we're going to do some special effects to make it up here, I said, Yoko, I have an idea.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, again? I was like, yeah. And I took the ink out of my pocket and I opened it. I said, when you're going to write I love you, first dip your finger into this black ink.
Yeah.
Because it'll be more realistic.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Again, I don't think so.
Oh, so she didn't do that.
She wouldn't do anything I said. But here's the thing.
Yeah.
You're talking about he married John Lennon of the Beatles was the first Beatle to get married.
Mm-hmm.
The second Beatle to get married was Ringo Starr.
Mm-hmm.
The third Beatle to get married was George Harrison.
Yeah.
And the fourth Beatle to get married was Paul McCartney.
Mm-hmm.
Then, the first Beatle to get divorced was John Lennon. The second Beatle to get divorced was Ringo Starr. The third Beatle to get divorced was George Harrison. And then Paul McCartney divorced Heather Mills, not Linda. So they did everything democratically and in alphabetical order. They're even dying in alphabetical order. A, B, C, D, F, G. No, I'm sorry. Reverse alphabetical order. Last Halloween, I was so surprised to see so many years after the demise of the Beatles, how many people were wearing like Beatles theme costumes on Halloween. Like I saw 4 dudes, they were dressed up like Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. I saw like 4 guys, and all they were doing was crossing the street back and forth again and again. Must have been boring, but they were the Abbey Road Club. And then there were like some magical mystery tour people dressed up like walruses and ducks.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to have a Beatles-related costume for. But I didn't have much money. I couldn't really afford a costume, so I decided to go as the Two Virgins album cover.
Yeah.
You know what that is?
What is it?
Look it up. It's like they're naked.
Yeah.
So that was
They're naked.
that was a hell of a costume. She's actually looking it up, people. You know what else is interesting about the Beatles?
What is it?
Well, there's one thing that the Beatles have, the 4 Beatles, not the other ones, that really no other band of that era can say the same, that every band member shares this particular quality. And do you know what it is?
What is it?
Well, some people would say songwriting ability.
Yeah.
Some people would say singing. Some people would say this. Nah, that's not important. But they had one characteristic
Yeah.
that no one has ever, and I mean no one has ever pointed this out. And I actually, one time, I was in Japan with Paul McCartney. And he was going to do, this is on YouTube, he did an interview with Japanese television people. But they had a technical problem, so they kind of walked away for a second, and then I'm just sitting there looking at Paul. Yeah? And so I said, hey, what he had said, the last question the interviewer asked him was about the Beatles. And Paul said, I think, every question about the Beatles has been answered. There's nothing new to say about the Beatles.
Yeah.
And so then they had the technical problem, and they kind of backed off for a second. And I'm looking at Paul. I said, Paul, I can tell you something new to say about the Beatles. He said, what? Yeah. He said, what is it? I said, well, what is it that the Beatles, you guys, what is it that what quality did the 4 of you have that probably no other band from the 60s or even the 70s, every member of the band shared that quality? And Paul goes, okay, I've never been asked that question. What is it? I said, you all have double consonants in your last name. Paul, M-C-C, McCartney, John, L-O-N-N, Lennon, George, H-A-R-R, Harrison, Ringo, S-T-A-R-R. No other band. He said, well,
Of course somebody.
you're right. He said, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And I said, listen, even Stuart Sutcliffe, he was a former member of the...
Cute.
There's 2 F's in Sutcliffe. S-U-T-C-L-I-F-E. He said, you're right. And I said, the only one who didn't is Pete Best. I said, is that why you fired him? He goes, yeah. I think he was kidding, but it was funny. All right, I think that concludes the podcast.
Okay.
Oh, one time, because I'm also an editor, so they hired me. They said, John Mellencamp, you know him?
Who is that?
He's some dude, he had a song called Jack and Diane or something.
He's an artist, singer.
Yeah, he's a performing artist. He used to be John Cougar Mellencamp, but then when Cougar became an older woman that you want to have sex with, I think he dropped the name, and now he's just John Mellencamp. And they said John directed his own music video, and he hears you're one of the hottest tickets in town as far as editing goes. All right. He's not going to come to the session, but you're going to sit with his manager and you're going to edit the video that he directed. Now this video was like all beautiful people, convertibles, and designer snakes, Designer snakes, it's like a yellow snake with it looks like a giraffe's neck with spots on it or whatever. And it was a whole thing.
Yeah.
And he shot it. And so I show up the first day, and the manager, John Mellencamp's manager, is sitting there. And he says, all right, before we get started, John wants to talk to you on the phone. So he called John. And then John gets on the phone, John Mellencamp there. He goes, I hear I hear kind of some hot stuff there in New York, I was working for Sony Music Studios at the time, and they produced MTV Unplugged, and they had so many shows. Live by Request was done there. I said, all right. He said, so, listen, if you're that good, I'm not going to even tell you what I want you to do with the footage that I directed and I shot there. You got it all there in front of you, and I'll bet you $1 that you're going to do a great job, and we're going to love it. So, I said, all right, John, thank you. Click. And so we get to work. A couple of days later, I finish editing John's Mellencamp's video with no input at all from him. I'm just trying to figure it out and do something. And the manager goes, great. We'll send it, we'll FedEx a tape to John there. And this was Friday. He said, come in on Monday morning, and by then we'll probably have some reaction from John Mellencamp there. So I come in on Monday morning, and the manager is on the phone. And he's talking, listening there. And then he hangs up the phone, and I said, what's up? He says, you're fired. He said, John thinks you just really effed up the whole thing there. It's not his vision at all. I said, well, I'll tell you 2 things. 1, he never told me his vision. 2, tell him I want that $1.